Roland Barthes, in his famous book called Camera Lucida, wrote that photographic shock consists in revealing what was so well hidden that the actor himself was unaware or unconscious of it. Harold Hauswald is a great example of exactly such an approach to photography. He's a German photographer who portrayed many of the critical events and social moods in East Germany before, during, and after the collapse of the Berlin Wall. On his website, Harold Hauswald states that he's observing life as if he's watching a movie, and he tries to take pictures in a way that the previous frame and the one after the moment can still be felt by the viewer. Indeed, many of his works have a cinematic quality to them, a sense of movement and change in the forever frozen frame. One of such examples is the work that will be under discussion in this video analysis, named as many others by the location it was shot at: Husemannstrasse, Prenzlauer Berg, Berlin, in 1987. Even though a photographer has much less to control than a painter, there are still some critical formal elements that are important for the analysis of this work. In particular, the composition and the employment of long shutter speed. Firstly, the long shutter speed creates exactly this effect that Harold was talking about on his website, as we can see the out traces of the movement that happened split moments before, and we can infer what is going to happen in the moment after. The most obvious example is a skirt on a woman's legs. Because of this blurriness created by the low shutter speed, we know that the woman's skirt is going to curl its way down when she finishes the twist. Same goes for any other moving character. Such decision creates what C. Ho would call spirit resonance in this work of art. Even though there are multiple interpretations of this term, the one that is useful for our analysis says that spirit resonance is when the spirit of the object is correctly represented. The definition of spirit resonance is fulfilled in the still through the usage of long shutter speed and other compositional elements. Firstly, it does so because we can assume that the atmosphere of the object at hand is very lively, vigorous, and disorienting. So the author cut the very right moment and method to represent such a spirit, as every person is in motion, and the shutter speed settings show us their restlessness. Additionally, almost none of the faces of the people in the frame are clearly visible, except for one person in the background. This aspect shows the true spirit of such an event, as people can hardly see each other's faces because of the darkness, which makes the crowd undiscernible moving entity, just like it is represented in the picture. Thus, the photographer portrays the true spirit of the party through the use of long shutter speed and the luckily caught moment, when almost none of the faces are seen and each subject is in motion. It is important to mention that Harold's process reminds the lens through which Navajo culture views the creation of art. Through the Navajo perspective, art is not divorced from everyday life. For the creation of beauty and the incorporation of oneself in beauty represents the highest attainment and ultimate destiny of man. Harold followed this way of creating art because he rarely had to set up a photo shoot. He was usually simply walking around with a camera and grasping the important moments of the community. It seems that taking pictures was simply an addition to living his life. Participating in protests, taking trains, attending parties, and riding to Brandenburg Gate when the wall was destroyed in 1989. The process is put above the result, which brings such incredible vividness and realisticness to his works. The beauty is seen in everything, just like one of the Navajo chants says, "With beauty before me, I walk. With beauty behind me, I walk. With beauty above me, I walk. With beauty below me, I walk." Compositionally, clearly, the element that attracts the most attention because it is at the intersection of the golden ratio are women's thighs. It seems very controversial and intriguing. As Roland Barthes said, it quite literally fulfills the photographic shot. Greenberg would probably argue that this work is kitsch, particularly because of the woman's thighs, as it makes the work more digestible and attractive for any common viewer. Female body has a long tradition of doing exactly that in popular culture, attracting. However, I would argue that it is a wrong interpretation because the picture does not have any commercial or ideological purposes. It simply captures the reality, the fun, the times, and the people. If not for the letters on the back wall, the content of it would be almost universal, which means that it's almost deprived of any meaning. That makes it more avant-garde, even though these dual distinctions are hard to apply to the real world. It's also important to mention how this picture was presented in the museum. It was exhibited with 8 other photographs showing various scenes of dancing. This whole composition created a unifying sense of movement and spirit. It seemed like a compilation of pictures was telling its own story, which showed the similarity that dance and movement can bring to people despite their various locations, backgrounds, occupations, and age. To conclude, using process-oriented approach to art, Harold Hauswald creates very realistic images and depicts the spirit of the ones portrayed. In the work discussed in this video, he used low shutter speed and interesting compositional elements to portray such a spirit.